Well, let's stay with the story now, get you some analysis with Mbekezeli Benjamin, who is a research and advocacy officer with Judges Matter. It's always good to talk to you, sir. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. What do you make of this decision by the Judicial Service Commission?
Good afternoon, Michelle, and good afternoon to the viewers. Well, the decision is puzzling, the first thing, because for us, we don't quite understand why the JSC decided not to recommend a suspension this time. In the last 15 years, the JSC has suspended all judges who have been accused of gross judicial misconduct. And in fact, there are currently 5 judges who are on suspension as we speak. We don't quite understand why this time they thought the suspension is not necessary. That kind of inconsistency for us, it raises a lot of questions, and it raises concern not only for the investigation itself, but also to victims of sexual and gender-based violence, of which sexual harassment is a form.
I suppose it's made even worse by the fact that the JSC decided in December that he should face a tribunal, but there doesn't seem any urgency in when that will start.
Yes, that is also something that is quite curious for us, because one would have expected that in December already they knew that they needed to appoint a tribunal. Right now it's February. We would have expected that there would be terms of reference and a panel that is set up to run the tribunal investigation. So it is quite surprising that they haven't gotten around to doing that.
And, I mean, speaking of surprising things, I suppose given the position that the Eastern Cape Judge President holds, and given the context in which he operates, South Africa, given our gender-based violence levels, in an ideal world, I would have liked to see him step aside and say, you know, I would actually like to step aside and I would actually like to clear my name first.
Well, yes, that ideal world is the one that Judges Matter called for in February when these allegations first arose. As soon as the allegations came out in public, we issued a statement saying that the Judge President should step aside out of a respect for the process and out of just an abundance of caution. We didn't get any indication that the Judge President would step aside. It was only after the Judicial Conduct Committee had issued a report to saying that there are prima facie findings against him that he considered special leave, and that special leave is the current special leave that he took, and which the JSC decided it was enough. But we believe it is not enough because, first of all, it is voluntary, so he could very well come back to work at any time from now. The second of all is that there are no conditions attached to the special leave. Ordinarily, when a judge is placed on suspension, there are conditions that the judge must finalize any cases that they have not finalized and write any judgments that they haven't written. So in this case, there's this special leave arrangement that has been set up, and he's given that opportunity to finalize those cases. So if he wanted, he could very well show up at the court where the complainant works, and that kind of thing, we can't rule out that it won't happen. So for us, it is a concern.
Are we concerned as well, Mbekezeli, about the decisions and, I suppose, the powers of the JSC insofar as issues like this is concerned? And I suppose we think back to Judge President John Hlophe when he was placed on special leave after the complaint was made against him in 2008, and the long saga of events that then unfolded in the years after that. Is the JSC empowered enough, or is it just not using the powers to the protection of the judiciary?
So that was the problem in 2008 and 2009 with the first complaint against Judge Hlophe. There wasn't even a legal framework which the JSC should operate, and one could argue that at that time it wasn't empowered, which is why the JSC Act was amended in 2010 to make sure that the JSC has very strict processes and there are strict decision-making powers that it should take. One of those powers is to recommend that a judge be suspended when they are facing allegations of judicial misconduct. And that is the power that the JSC has consistently exercised in the last 14 years. So there are currently 5 judges on suspension for various allegations. But in this case, the JSC decided to not exercise that power. And the question is why?
Yeah, absolutely. The question is why. And as an advocacy group like Judges Matter, what would be the next step here for you?
Well, the next step, we are hoping that the JSC will come out with a proper explanation for why they decided not to act like this. We, in fact, will be writing a letter to them next week asking for the explanation and for them to give the public confidence that this decision was taken with proper consideration, because one of the things that they should have considered is the message that this decision sends to victims or potential victims of sexual harassment, because one of the big problems we have in South African society, and particularly in the legal profession, is that we know that sexual harassment exists, but there are very few people who are brave enough to come forward as victims and say, this is what happened to me. Yeah. So we wonder if the JSC did consider this as a factor. And so one of the things we'll be asking for is an explanation in the letter that we'll write to them.